Here's your homework for targets 4 and 5 from Unit 2. So we started off really basic on the homework. The absolute value of x equals 3. And you might not even have to create equations here, but remember we take what's inside the absolute value brackets. We set it equal to the positive answer and also the negative answer. And notice here that they're already solved. So again, that was just a super basic one. It almost makes it hard because it's so basic. On number 2, we're going to start off by getting the absolute value brackets by themselves by adding 8 to both sides. So we have the absolute value of n equals -1. Now remember the absolute value brackets, they're always positive. So there's no way that the absolute value brackets, which are positive, could equal a -1. So this is no solution. The process there was pretty simple algebraically, but you do have to think about your answers. Number 3, I'm going to start by subtracting 7. So we have the absolute value of -8 plus x equals 3. And we're going to create two equations. So -8 plus x equals +3. We're also going to set it equal to the -3. And then solving both equations, I get x equals 11. And remember, you can plug these answers back in to check your work. That's what you should do on your test or quiz. And x equals 5. On 4, we have a little bit more going on here. It looks kind of scary with the fraction. I'm just going to start by subtracting 5 on both sides. Okay, now I have to get rid of that -2 out in front. So I'm going to divide both sides by -2. I get the absolute value of b over 9 equals 1. So I'm going to say b over 9 equals +1. B over 9 equals -1. And then if I have b divided by 9, I'm going to multiply both sides by 9 to get rid of that. So I get b equals 9. And then over here, same process, which makes it kind of nice. B equals -9. On number 5, at the bottom, we're going to start by adding 4 to both sides. So that gives us 90. Divide both sides by 10. So I have the absolute value of -9n equals 9. And then again, we're going to create those two equations. So -9n equals 9. And -9n equals -9. And solving, so if I divide by -9 over here, I get -1. If I solve by dividing by -9 over here, I get +1. And then our last case on number 6, or our last example for this target, I'm going to subtract 1 to start off with and divide by -3. So I have the absolute value of 9x plus 5 equals, I think that's 32. So now I'm going to create the two equations. I have 9x plus 5 equals +32, and 9x plus 5 equals -32. And then I'm going to solve both these equations, so starting off by subtracting 5 on both sides. 9x equals 27. If I divide by 9, I get x equals 3. Over here, if I subtract 5, I get 9x equals -37. And then I'm going to divide by 9. I'm going to see if that simplifies at all. It does not. So if I divide by 9, I get -37 over 9. You can put that in decimal form if you want. I left it in fraction form, but I did make sure that it does not simplify. So that's target 4 on your homework, and then if you flip it over, we have target 5. So on target 5, we are going to solve the absolute value inequality and then graph the solution. So remember, we treat this in a very similar way as if it were an equation. In fact, I'm even going to write it as an equation to start with. And I'm going to solve that equation just like we were doing on the front. And then we're going to decide, do we have an open or closed point at these two values? And that's based on your inequality symbol. So since it's equal to, at 2 and -2, we're going to have a closed point. And then I'm going to test a value inside. And I'm picking inside because 0 is inside, and I like to test 0. And I'm going to plug that into the original equation. So this is 0 is less than or equal to 2, which is a true statement, which means we're going to shade between those 2 points. On number 8, as I rewrite our inequality, I'm going to go ahead and add that 2 over. So again, the two equations would be v equals 10 and v equals -10. And those would be open points because there's no equal to. So we have 10 and -10. That would be here and here. I'm going to test 0. So plugging it into the original inequality. If I simplify that, I get -2 is greater than 8, which is not true. So 0 is in between. I'm going to shade outside since 0 is not true. Number 9, I'm going to start off by dividing both sides by 4. So as I rewrite, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Absolute value of 1 plus a is less than, and then that would be -8. Okay, so think about this. Positive, because it's the absolute value. Is a positive number ever going to be less than a -8 or a negative number? This will never happen, so this is no solution, and we are not going to shade anywhere on our number line because no numbers work. All right, let's take a look at number 10. So as I rewrite, I'm going to add 9 over. So that would give me a 1. We're going to create our two equations. N over 9 equals 1. N over 9 equals -1. And to solve this, to get rid of the divided by 9, I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. And then same thing over here. If I multiply both sides by 9, I get -9. At these two values on our number line, we are going to have closed points. And notice I'm going to have to make my own points. That's okay. And then we're going to test a value. I'm going to pick 0 as usual, plugging it into the original inequality. Okay, so the absolute value of 0 over 9 would just be 0. So this simplifies to -8 is less than or equal to -9 is less than or equal to -8, which is a true statement. So I'm going to shade in between those 2 points. On number 11, starting that solving process as I rewrite, I'm going to do 8 times the absolute value of n plus 4, and let's go ahead and add that 4 over. So this would be is greater than -64. And then if I divide by 8, so I get the absolute value of n plus 4 is greater than, that would be -8. And again, just think about these absolute value problems. So this is positive because it's inside absolute value bars. Every positive number is going to be greater than -8. This is always going to be true. So this answer is all real numbers. And on the number line, make sure you shade in everything because everything works. And then on our last one, we're going to start by subtracting 5 on both sides. So that would be 74. And then I'm going to divide by 2. So the absolute value of 3 plus 4m is less than or equal to, and that would be 37. So I'm going to create two equations here. I 3 plus 4m equals 37, and 3 plus 4m equals negative 37. And then we're going to do some solving here. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So 4m equals 34. And then that doesn't divide evenly if I divide both sides by 4, but I can simplify that. And I get 17 over 2. Over here, if I subtract 3 from both sides, I get negative 40. Divide by 4, m equals negative 10. And remember, you can always check your answers by plugging it back in. On this one though, so 17 divided by 2, if we want an actual value, that's 8.5. So I'm going to plot that with a closed point just like right there. I'm just going to do the best I can. And then we have negative 10. And then we're going to test a value, and you guys know by now I'm going to test at 0. So I'm plugging that into the original inequality, hoping I don't run out of room here. I'm good. Okay, so then if I simplify this, that's going to be 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 5, which is 11. 11 is less than or equal to 79. That's a true statement, so I'm going to shade in between because 0 is in between those values. And that's your homework for targets 4 and 5.